Hey, how you doing, guys? We're going to take a look at Canon announcing their new cinema camera. In fact, not only that, they're going to be releasing one probably early next year as well. And this one's particularly exciting because this is the one that I wish I could have bought back then before I bought my Canon C100. Different story altogether. And we're actually going to be comparing the Canon C70 with the Canon C100, which I'm using right now. Simply because that was one of the cheapest options back then. So we're going to kind of compare the two. Obviously, you can get the Canon C100 a lot cheaper than even this C70, but it's not that more expensive, considering all the options that you get. So we're going to take a quick look at the camera first before we talk about it. And we got all this imported. And here's the front shot of the Canon C70. Now it does use the RF mount for their new lenses, and you can buy an adapter, which I think is around $500 extra. So you can use a lot of your older EF lenses, so you might want to take that in account of the price. And we're going to see here's the front slant, so you can see the left side of the camera. Right there. You can use also more external buttons. Here's the side view, which is, I believe, the mini XLR inputs, along with some other buttons there. And then there's the back view. And it also utilizes a flip-out touchscreen. Notice there's no EVF, which is also, for some people, not an option. Been considering they're hitting a certain price point, and the form factor is a lot smaller. They didn't include it. There are ways around it, such as using the HDMI out port for an electric viewfinder as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the camera specifically. Hold on, I need a coffee because I just woke up. Let's look at some of the specs here for this camera. Now it does come in at a 9.6 megapixels, which is capable of doing 4K or actually Cinema 4K DCI. 4K comes in at 10-bit 422 color space, up to 120 frames per second in 4K. Now you can go up to 180 frames per second in 1080p as well. Long GOP is also an option. And what's probably the two most favorite things about this camera is the price point and a much better codec, even comparing it with a cheaper camera such as the C100. And the price point is coming in at about $5,500. Back when the C100 came out, that was at almost $8,000. Now it utilizes the same sensor, Super 35 millimeter, same sensor as the C300 Mark II. And like I said, one of the best features of this camera, it has a much better codec. And that was one of the complaints I've had on the original C100. Of course, with the C100, I use the AVC HD. While it's better than an MP4, you are limited to 24 megabits per second. Now, what that kind of means, if you're going to be recording into the camera, if you start using heavy grading on this, because the color space isn't as good recording internally, which is 8-bit 420 color space, it breaks apart really fast. Now with this Canon C70, it uses the Mxf Codec, which I love. It's the same codec that I use on my what's that? XF100, I think. XF100, yeah, XF100 uses the 422 color space Mxf up to 50 megabits per second. So much better codec than AVC HD. Now, considering you can record to up to 10-bit 422 color space at about 410 megabits per second, up to 4K. So the bandwidth's much more. So you can actually record internally and have lots of headroom to do some heavy grading post edit, which is great, which is one of the biggest things I like about this camera. It's almost like having a mini C300 Mark II in some ways. There are some drawbacks, perhaps, for some people. It doesn't do Canon RAW light, but considering that has its own problems, because it's going to raise the price point of the camera as well, and you could always go to a Canon C200 that does Canon RAW light, and it uses a much more expensive recording method, which is the CFast cards, which tend to be very expensive in the first place. It doesn't have electronic viewfinder, another con for some people, and there are ways you can hook it up using the HDMI port out to electronic viewfinder that way. Now it does have very much of the same thing with a lot of cinema cameras, the Canon line of cinema cameras, such as the dual slot recording, dual XLR audio. Now what's nice about these, the dual slot recording, is you can record at 2 different codecs, 2 different resolutions simultaneously. So that's great to see as well. Now for some, it uses the mini XLR audio, and that's really a size constraint, really, and so they had to use the mini XLR, and that means you may have to use some kind of adapter, which may or may not be a pro or con. Now it does, I believe, use internal pixel autofocus or something along those lines. It also features auto ISO, which is unique to this camera, because now you'll automatically, like going from indoor to outdoor and vice versa, automatically adjust for exposure, which is also really nice as well. So I think this is a great camera, and not for everybody. If you need something much more, you got other cinema camera lines, but this hits 2 things which are my favorite. Good price point at $5,500, and the Mxf Codec. Those are the 2 that just makes this camera outstanding in those cases. So give me your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and see you guys later.